war, tap dancing, mashed turnips, bombings, cherry cola, more tap dancing. This is Molly, an American girl on the home front, circa 1944.
Colas were cool. Jitterbug was hot. And the chance to dance is Molly's dream. Molly, an American girl on the home front, premieres next on Disney Channel.
Pleasant Company released the first 3 American Girl dolls, and it consisted of 3 historical dolls. You have Kierstin Larson in 1854, and she's a Swedish immigrant to the Minnesota frontier. We have Samantha Parkington, who is set in 1904 in upstate New York during the Progressive Era. And then we have Molly, 1944, at the end of the World War II, showing what life was like for children in America on the home front during World War II. Now, Molly and Samantha have gotten movies, but weirdly enough, Kierstin hasn't. This seems to be due to either budgetary or logistical concerns, because Kierstin's first book is all about her immigrating from Sweden, so they would have to show the boat journey and all these other things. Plus, the first book is supposed to have the Larson family only speaking to each other in English. Kierstin doesn't learn English until her book, Kierstin Learns a Lesson. So it makes sense why that movie would be harder to make than the other ones. But following the success of the Samantha movie the year prior, Molly came out in 2006, and I personally remember seeing this on Disney Channel. I'm sure it aired in other places. It was a direct-to-DVD movie, the first American Girl doll movie to get a theatrical release, and I think the only one was Kit Kitteridge 2 years later. If you had an American Girl doll growing up, the doll that you had says a lot about you. Were you a Samantha? Were you a Josefina? And if you wore glasses as a child, you were automatically sorted into House Molly McIntyre. Molly's film blends different parts from her central 6-book series, mainly taking things from Molly Takes Flight and Changes for Molly. We also get the integration of the character of Emily from the book Happy Birthday, Molly. The movie opens in 1943 in Jefferson, Illinois, and Molly and her 2 best friends, Linda and Susan, are heading to the movie theater to see the latest film release. During this time, before movies would play, instead of things like trailers like we're used to, they would show film reels. And since people didn't have TVs at home, this was one of the best ways to get information at the time besides a newspaper. So we get a lot of exposition dumping through these film reels, and I think it's a good use of film as a medium, and obviously the children watching this movie won't be super familiar with all the events of World War II, so I think this is a good way to help the audience understand what's going on. It can be funny at some times, like they'll go and they'll watch a film reel about something, and then 10 seconds later, whatever they watched a movie about, that exact thing will happen to them in real life, which I just think is so funny. It's like they're afraid that if they show the film reel too early, the child audience will forget whatever they just learned in that film reel. So, I don't know, I just think that's funny. Molly and her friends talk about how much they love their teacher, Miss Campbell, how they think she's the prettiest and nicest woman ever, and they talk about how she's engaged to a dreamy soldier, Lieutenant Tom Davies. The girls dream about what a beautiful wedding Miss Campbell's gonna have, and when they get to the soda fountain, they see that Miss Campbell and her fiance are actually there in the shop. So the girls go up to the counter and try to order ice cream, but the boy behind the counter informs them that due to the war going on, there's no ice cream right now. The girls are really disappointed, but Molly reminds them that everyone needs to do their part. So as good Americans, they order cherry colas instead. Molly begins to impersonate Miss Campbell, saying, "Oh, what a lovely wedding we'll have, Tom." But of course, right then, Miss Campbell comes up behind her and it's like he's right behind me, isn't he? But Miss Campbell's really nice about it and introduces the girls to her fiance, Tom Davies. We cut to Molly's house for dinner where we meet her family. We have her dad, Dr. McIntyre, who is a kind and gentle soul who seems maybe to perhaps have Molly as his favorite child. We have Mrs. McIntyre, who is the perfect, glamorous 1940s housewife. The character of Mrs. McIntyre is very noteworthy because she's played by Molly Ringwald, who is definitely the most famous actress in this movie, and unfortunately, Mrs. McIntyre doesn't have a lot to work with in the script. She doesn't have that distinctive a personality. We learn later on that she knows how to take apart and put an engine back together really skillfully, but besides that, we don't really get a lot of information about her. We have Molly's older sister, Jill, who is all about being mature and grown up. Then we have her older brother, Ricky, whose personality is just boy. He's just a boy. He loves war. He wishes he could join up, but he's like 10, so obviously that's not going to happen. Then we have Molly, of course. And in the books, Molly had a younger brother, Brad. They cut him from the movie. I don't know if it was like a budget thing or if they didn't want to work with another child actor. I mean, I don't really think it detracts anything from the story. And the animosity that she had with her brothers, they kind of just channel that into Molly having animosity with her older sister, Jill. At dinner, they're talking about their neighbor, Mrs. Guilford, and how her son, Johnny, has been shipped off to war. And when someone is shipped off to war, their family puts a blue star in their window, signifying that someone in the family is serving in the military. Molly says for her upcoming birthday, she would like to have a royal tea party like Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret Rose, and her mother informs her that they don't have the rations in order to do a big party like that. And her older sister Jill talks down to her, being like, "You're so immature, Molly. You don't understand sacrifice." And Mrs. McIntyre says, "She's old enough to understand, aren't you, Molly?" Molly is obviously really disappointed and slinks off to her bedroom, but her dad comes up and offers to take her out for a special day, just the two of them, and Molly seems more excited about this than she was even about the royal tea party, so everything worked out well for her. We then get our first scene at school for Molly, and Miss Campbell is leading them in singing America the Beautiful. And while Miss Campbell goes up to teach, Molly and her friends are so obsessed with Miss Campbell that they keep talking about her ring and how pretty she looks, but in doing this, they're not paying attention. So when Miss Campbell asks Molly a question, Molly doesn't know the answer. So we go over to the class know-it-all, Allison, and Allison primly and smugly says that she knows the answer to this question. Molly is then able to participate a little bit, but we see that one of Molly's character flaws is that she gets very zeroed in on something and forgets what she's actually supposed to be doing. We learn that almost everyone in the class has a family member that's serving in the military, and in the books, Molly's dad is already gone at the beginning of the story. We don't see him on page physically, but I like that they changed this for the movie so that we can see his bond with Molly and with his family, and that we can get attached to him before he's deployed off. After school, Molly has her tap dancing class, led by their teacher, Miss Lavonda, and Miss Campbell accompanying them on piano. Allison is clearly the best dancer in the class, and in the books, Molly was the best dancer in the class, but in the movie, they have Molly really struggling and not wanting to practice and things like that. I also like this change. I think it's good for Molly to have something to work towards, and it's a part of Molly's overall character arc of learning to do things that you don't really want to do. So the thing she doesn't want to do is practice. Miss Campbell and Miss Lavonda inform the girls that at the Christmas extravaganza next year, there is going to be a lead starring role for the tap dancing segment, and she will be called Miss Victory. All the girls are really excited about this. They learn that Miss Victory won't just be performing at the Christmas extravaganza, she'll also be performing at war bond rallies and things like that, and maybe even USO shows. After class, Molly is talking with her friends about how she wants to be Miss Victory, and her friends are like, Molly, but you're not very good at tap dancing. And Molly says, "I know I'm not very good, but I'm going to start practicing and I'm going to start working really hard." And her friends are kind of like, "Okay, Molly, whatever you say." We then get to see Molly and her dad's special birthday outing. They go to a gazebo in the town square where there's a jitterbug contest going on with really lively big band music. Molly and her dad dance, and her dad gives her a silver locket, and they have a really sweet father-daughter moment. Jumping forward, Dr. McIntyre comes home another night, and he seems to really have something weighing on his mind. Molly wants him to come and join her for their radio show, but he says, "No, I need to go talk to your mother." We see a very serious conversation going on with Dr. and Mrs. McIntyre. Afterwards, the air raid siren goes off, and the whole family has to go hunker down in the basement as a part of an air raid drill. Once they're down there, Dr. McIntyre decides to tell his children that he works with all these young doctors at the hospital that have decided to join up in the military, and he feels like he should go and help and do his part for the war effort and help soldiers overseas. Ricky, who really idolizes the bravery and heroism of the soldiers who are fighting, says that it's swell that his dad is joining the military, but Molly completely freaks out. She is so anxious about her dad dying. She's like, "Dad, you can't go, you might die." And her dad says, "Well, I need to do my part for the war effort." And some people here say that Molly's reaction is bratty. Maybe it's the delivery of the actress, or maybe it's just the entire way that she's being. But
Dad, no.
No. I'll be shipping out for England very soon.
Gosh, that's swell. No, it isn't. It's horrible. You're needed here.
Molly, your father and I have thought this through very carefully.
That's why he's leaving his family? To go to some strange country that's being bombed for real?
I think We need to have a little bit of grace for Molly. She is 10 years old, and in her mind she does legitimately think that her dad may die, and statistically speaking he very well might die. Later, Molly goes out to the swing set and her dad joins her out there. He explains to her that his family is his North Star, and that whenever you look up at the North Star, I'll be thinking of you. And this is a very cute little father-daughter moment again. Molly asks him to promise that he will come back, and he promises, and he can't keep this promise for sure. Obviously, we don't know if he'll die. He can't control that or not. And I understand that he wanted to calm Molly's nerves and that, but imagine if he had promised that to his 10-year-old daughter and then he was killed in the war, like after he promised that he would come back. But we then jump to the family saying goodbye to their dad at the train station. Ricky is trying to be a macho man, and instead of giving his father a hug, he shakes his hand. And then we have Jill, who's crying and gives her dad a big hug. And then we see that Molly is very disappointed and sad still, and weirdly enough, she doesn't hug her dad in this scene. She does end up running after the train to tell him that she loves him, but I don't know, it's kind of weird that she doesn't hug her dad in this scene. Molly and her family put a blue star in the window, signifying that they have a family member serving in the military, and while her siblings are laughing and enjoying their radio show, Molly sadly trudges up the stairs, clearly much more affected by the war than she ever had been before. She cuts her dad's face out of their family picture and puts it in her locket. At school, Molly and her class are preparing for the school-wide spelling bee, and it seems that Molly will be the top contender for 3rd grade. At lunch, they see Miss Campbell writing a letter, and they swoon over the idea that she's writing to her fiancé. After school, Molly invites Linda and Susan over to have grilled cheese, but when they go in the house, Molly's mom isn't there. It's their neighbor, Mrs. Guilford. Mrs. Guilford serves them bologna sandwiches and milk, which is the most Midwestern thing I've ever heard in my life. And she goes on and on about her precious baby boy Johnny, much to Molly's annoyance. At dinner, Molly's complaining about this, but her mother seems very distracted. And then her mother reveals that she has taken a job, and her children are shocked by this. Ricky is very sexist and very wary of his mother being capable of this. He's like, "You have a job?" But Mrs. McIntyre informs us that before her children were born, she could take an engine apart and put it back together faster than any one of her brothers. She's taken a job at the aircraft plant nearby, and this was very common at the time for women to be joining the workforce. Since the men were away, they needed women to step into those roles in munitions and aircraft building and things like that. Mrs. McIntyre also explains that she's baking a casserole, and Jill explains that her friend Doreen's brother died in France, so they're baking a casserole to give to the family, and Molly's like, what is a casserole gonna do for their dead relative? And Mrs. McIntyre explains that when someone dies, a casserole is a small thing that you can do for them, and throughout the movie, the motif of casserole will be used to communicate when someone passes away. Molly is very upset that her mother is gonna be having a job and complains, saying, who's gonna look after us? And Mrs. McIntyre says that her Aunt Eleanor will be coming, and the kids are really excited about that. They love Aunt Eleanor, but Aunt Eleanor is busy and it's going to take her a little while to be able to arrive. So in the meantime, Mrs. Guilford will be watching them, much to Molly's dismay. The next day, we see Mrs. McIntyre all dressed for work. She's wearing trousers. A woman in trousers? Someone call the modesty police. She also has her hair pinned up and out of her face, which would have been very practical because factories were very worried about women's hair getting caught in the machinery. So she looks like a very modern Rosie the Riveter, ready to take on the workforce. And at last we arrive at the infamous turnip scene. At dinner that night, Mrs. Guilford tells the children that they have to eat these mashed turnips that they made. Molly refuses, and so Mrs. Guilford said, if you don't eat these mashed turnips, you cannot get up from the table. But she really underestimated how stubborn Molly was. Molly sits at that table for over 2 hours, refusing to eat them. When Mrs. McIntyre gets home, she spares some of their butter and sugar rations to make the turnips taste better, and Molly ends up really liking them. Her mother tells her, though, that in life, there's going to be a lot of times you have to do things that you don't want to do, and someone might not be around to sweeten the taste for you. And we then see Molly practicing her tap routine, trying to work towards becoming Miss Victory, when Miss Campbell comes in. And Molly decides to tell her, like, oh, we talk about your wedding a lot. We fantasize about your wedding. And Miss Campbell laughs us off, saying, yeah, I dreamed about weddings too when I was your age. But a secret is, it doesn't matter how splendid the wedding is. She's like, I would marry Tom anywhere, even on our front porch. Molly expresses that she really misses her dad. Miss Campbell expresses that she misses her fiance. Molly says that her dad believed that she could become Miss Victory, so Miss Campbell helps her practice and she plays the music so Molly can do her little tap routine. When Molly gets home, she sees her mom cooking a casserole, which she knows signals that someone has died. It turns out that Mrs. Guilford's son, Johnny, has been killed in the war. Mrs. Guilford now has no one left besides her old cat. She's all alone in her house. She has no other family. And so when Molly takes the casserole over to her, they share a really nice moment and they hug. And you can tell throughout the movie that Mrs. Guilford really gets a lot of solace and comfort from becoming slowly more and more a part of the McIntyre family. At the movies, we see a newsreel about how the Germans have been bombing London and different parts of England known as the Blitz, and due to this, British children have been being sent out into the countryside or out of the country to places where it is a lot less likely to be bombed. Now, if you've seen the Chronicles of Narnia movie, then you are very familiar with this, with the 4 kids being sent on a train to a place way far out in the country where they can be safe from the bombings. Immediately after learning about this through the newsreels, we go home and surprise, there's a little British girl waiting at Molly's house. Her name is Emily, and she was originally supposed to stay with one of Mrs. McIntyre's co-workers, but that woman's son got injured and he had to come back home, so now Emily is going to be staying with the McIntyres. Linda and Susan are so excited to meet a real live British person, and they ask her, have you met Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret Rose? And they keep pelting her with questions and questions, and finally Emily says, yeah, I've definitely met them, and the girls are so excited, like, oh, whoa. Molly seems a little bit skeptical, pretty jealous in this moment of all the attention that Emily is getting. Emily says that her mother is Lady Bennett and that she lives in Bennett Manor and that her life has been very fancy leading up to this now.
Is your mother a duchess or maybe a countess?
She's Lady Bennett.
I think Emily's getting tired after
Do you
her.
live in a castle?
No, a manor. Bennett Manor.
Bennett Manor?
When Molly and Emily are in Molly's room, Molly sees that Emily only has a couple little meager belongings, and Emily's like, oh, they lost my trunk. That's why I have so few things here. And just a little side note, the actress playing Emily isn't even British, and her accent, for an American kid trying to do the accent, it's pretty good, but I could tell that she was not an actual British child, and then I looked it up and she was born in Australia, but then she was raised in the US, so her accent is not genuine. I'm sorry to burst your bubble.
My trunk was lost on the boat.
Obviously, we as the audience can tell that Emily is lying and embellishing, but you know what? This is a little girl who has spent half of her life being bombed, spending every day thinking that she's going to die, and later we learn that her mother is actually dead. Her mother was killed in the bombing. So the fact that Emily was sent across the ocean all by herself, away from everyone she's ever known and ever loved, she wants so badly to be accepted. And she senses that with these girls, the way to be accepted is to say that she knows the princesses and that she's lived a fancy life, because that's what they expect from British people. They expect them to all be lords and ladies and fancy people. So Molly gets the impression that Emily is really stuck up and is used to palaces and fancy things. Molly also comes off as pretty selfish during this because she's saying she doesn't want to share her room with Emily, and why does she have to do it? And, you know, Molly is going to seem very resentful of Emily for the next part of the movie.
My room so you and Molly can share.
Share my room?
Yes, dear. Isn't that exciting?
Yes. Very exciting.
At dinner that night, Ricky has a morbid curiosity and wants to know all about the bombings and the explosions, but Mrs. McIntyre reminds him, hey, Emily's actually living through that. It's not just something she sees on a newsreel. That's her real life, and people are dying all around you. And she's been surrounded by war since she was 5 years old, and Ricky's kind of like, ugh. At school, everyone is abuzz about the new exotic girl from England. During the class spelling bee, Emily does very, very well, making Molly pretty jealous of her because Molly had previously been the best speller in the class. At lunch, all the kids crowd and gather around Emily, asking her questions about having tea with the princesses and living this fancy life. And Molly is so jealous of Emily. She's trying anything to get the attention off of her.
Linda says you know Princess Elizabeth.
And Princess Margaret Rose.
Do you really know the princesses? Yes.
Look, there's Miss Campbell. I think she has the list for the spelling bee.
You'll have to come over to my house, Emily. We could arrange a little tea party for you.
Yes, that looks like the list.
Miss Campbell comes out and announces who the spelling bee contestants from the 3rd grade will be, and it's Molly and Emily, much to Molly's ire. That night in their bedroom, Molly is trying to study for the spelling bee, but Emily is just relaxing and reading a book. And Molly's like, aren't you gonna study? And Emily's like, I don't really need to. Do you want me to help you study? And this drives Molly crazy. She's like, oh, she's so stuck up. She's so arrogant. At the school-wide spelling bee, it gets down to the last couple of contestants. And Emily is supposed to spell the word maneuver. And she spells it, and they say, I'm sorry, you got that wrong. But then they realize, oh, she gave the proper British spelling of maneuver, which makes sense since she's British. So they say, okay, you got that word correct. And Molly is supposed to be spelling the word mnemonic. But a messenger comes in and is giving news to Miss Campbell. And Miss Campbell starts bawling. She starts sobbing. The principal comes out and says, okay, change of plans. Molly and Emily, you're co-winners. You both get a ribbon. Everyone go home. And we learn that Miss Campbell's fiance, Lieutenant Tom Davies, has died. We jump forward and we see the woman who was originally supposed to house Emily. She asks, oh, how do you find Emily? And Molly's like, well, she's used to a lot fancier things than this house. She's used to a palace. And the woman says, what do you mean? She lives in a tiny apartment over a sweet shop. Her dad is a bus driver and her mom died in the bombings. And this breaks Molly's brain. She is shocked. So she's like, oh, everything Emily has been telling us has been a lie. And the next day we see that Molly is talking to Allison, and Allison is being very snobby, and Allison says, could you ask Emily if she would want to come over to my house for high tea? She's used to much fancier things than your house, Molly. And in a moment of character growth and maturity for Molly, she does not snitch on Emily, and she just says, sure, I'm sure she'd like that. And Molly doesn't go around telling everyone Emily's secret. That night there's an air raid drill, and this freaks Emily out, understandably, because she spent the last 4 years of her life constantly having bombs rain down on her and having to hide in a bomb shelter basically every single night, thinking that this could be the time that I die. And obviously this also takes her back to the memory of her mom dying in a bombing raid. Emily confides in Molly about how afraid she is and how scary it was having to hide in the bunkers and how they'd be cold and hungry and afraid. In the middle of the night, Emily is having a horrible nightmare and she's screaming in her sleep. It seems to be about the bombings and about her mother dying. Molly wakes her up and Emily is so afraid. And Emily finally trusts Molly and she says, look, my mom isn't Lady Bennett. We're not fancy. My mom died in the bombings. I just really, really wanted you guys to like me. Molly and Emily have a cute little sleepover and it's a sweet sister bonding moment and shows us the next step forward in their relationship where they've reconciled. We see a film reel about the Lady Eagles, a group of women who were flying missions to help out with the war effort. After the movie, Molly is talking about how much she loves her Aunt Eleanor and how Aunt Eleanor is a female pilot and how she'll be coming to visit soon. The girls then talk about how they want to go roller skating, but Molly says, wait, I have a better idea. And then they go to her house and then very awkwardly Molly does a tap dance routine for them. Emily is watching so intently, but Linda and Susan are like, when will this be over? And then it's done and Linda's like, can we please just go roller skating now? And Emily's the only one who's supportive. She's clapping and she's congratulating her. Molly's saying, well, what did you think? Did you like it? And the girls are like, well, you improved, but they still just want to go roller skating. Aunt Eleanor arrives and she breaks the news to Molly that she's not going to be able to stay and help take care of them because she's joining the Lady Eagles. And another one of those situations where we just saw this film reel and then that exact thing happens in Molly's life. And Molly runs away, she's really upset, but she takes some time to process it and she tells her Aunt Eleanor, I understand why you have to go. It's just like how Dad is the best doctor, you're the best pilot, and we need the best to help win the war effort. The girls are upset that they no longer have Miss Campbell as their teacher now that they're in 4th grade, and they say they don't like their new teacher and that she looks like she's always eating a lemon. And then that day at tap practice, we see that their new teacher is the one playing the piano for their tap class, and Miss Lavanda has announced that she will be saying who will be Miss Victory today. She congratulates Molly on obviously having done a lot of hard work and practice. And later, when the cast list gets posted, Allison freaks out and we get this iconic moment.
Oh no! It's a mistake!
And then it turns out that Molly has earned the part of Miss Victory, which has obviously made her very happy. She and Emily run home, they're so excited, they're on an adrenaline high, but then we see that her mom is home from work and is very upset. We learn that Dr. McIntyre had gone out onto the street to help people after a bombing, and he is now, no one knows where he is. He's gone missing. And so they're obviously very upset. They don't know what's happened to their dad. He could be dead, and it's a really sad moment for the family. Molly visits Miss Campbell's class and says she doesn't know if she wants to be Miss Victory because she's so sad about her dad. But Miss Campbell reminds her, like, hey, your dad thought you could be Miss Victory, and he wouldn't want you to give up on doing what you love just because he's not here. And then Miss Campbell says, just like how my fiance Tom, even though he's not around anymore, he would still want me to keep doing what I love, which is teaching. The McIntyres then receive a telegram informing them that their dad has officially been classified as missing in action. Obviously, this is heartbreaking for them. Emily tries to cheer them up, saying, people go missing all the time there. People vanish into thin air all the time, and it doesn't mean that they're dead. But this doesn't really actually seem to comfort anyone that much. We see another very on-the-nose film reel about how doctors are saving people's lives and how important they are to the war effort, but that you, yes you at home, should be doing your part for the war effort. So this inspires Molly, and she decides to do everything she can, and she sets off. She volunteers at a savings bond rally. She collects pieces of scrap metal. She makes care packages for the soldiers at the Red Cross. She collects old blankets and cloth to be turned into new clothing for those who need it the most. And she and her friends roll bandages. And I really hope that they wash their hands before handling all these bandages that are about to go on very infectable wounds. Okay, wait, correction. I think this is Molly's school outfit because the pinafore she was wearing earlier, that had the wrong neckline. I think this is supposed to be Molly's outfit. I could be wrong. I think this is her outfit from Molly Learns a Lesson. But anyway, when Mrs. McIntyre gets home from work, she's absolutely exhausted and she's dreading having to decorate for Christmas that year. But much to her surprise, her kids actually decorated the entire house already, and they pooled their pocket money together and bought a Christmas tree. And Mrs. McIntyre is so happy and so relieved that they took this load off of her shoulders. They then receive a very happy telegram telling them that their dad is alive and he's in a hospital and that he'll travel home as soon as he's able to. So we're finally able to beat those dead parent trope allegations. That night, Emily tells Molly that she finally feels like she belongs with the McIntyres and that she's very happy.
I thought you were spoiled.
I thought you were stuck up.
Oh, won't we a pair? I feel safe here.
I'm glad, Emily.
Finally, it's the big Christmas extravaganza. Molly and the girls in her class put on an amazing performance with Molly as Miss Victory. Molly's Miss Victory outfit and then Emily's performance outfit were both actually available for their dolls from the movie collection, and it is so cute. I mean, just look at these. I love it so much. Molly does an amazing job as Miss Victory and she gets a lot of applause, and then afterwards she hears someone call her name, but she doesn't know who it is because she's not wearing her glasses. Very relatable. But then she puts on her glasses and she sees that it's her dad, and it's so cute. Her dad made it back, and it's a heartwarming, beautiful reunion, and he's able to hug his family. We get this absolutely shattering moment though where Miss Campbell looks on and you can just tell that she's thinking, Mrs. McIntyre gets to be reunited with her love, but I'll never be reunited with mine. So it's a bittersweet moment in that sense. And then the McIntyres go home, and Molly and Emily are in their cute little Christmas outfits that were also available for the dolls. Molly's outfit is supposed to be a green velvet dress. I think it's just a very, very dark green in this scene so that it looks almost black. And then Emily has this cute little purple dress that she's wearing, and Molly says, Dad, you being home is the best Christmas present I could have ever asked for. And her dad's like, yes, but I also brought you home some things. So he hands out presents to his kids. He got little aviator wings for Ricky. He got a silk scarf from Paris for Jill. He got a cute little field nurse doll for Molly. And then he even got a present for Emily, which is really, really touching. He got her a copy of The Christmas Carol, which is her favorite book in the entire world. And earlier, Emily had talked about how her family used to read The Christmas Carol every year for Christmas, and it meant so much to her, but that her copy was destroyed in the bombings. So then Emily and the McIntyres read A Christmas Carol aloud, and we get this ending beautiful little snapshot of domestic Christmas bliss. And that's the end of Molly, an American Girl on the Homefront. Okay, bye!